right, good morning, everybody, and we welcome you. We're about to begin Week 11 here. It's Thursday, November 13th. Get ready for Jets and Patriots tonight. This is Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. We've got 8 games to get to today. We're going to try Kansas City at Denver, Washington at Miami, Tampa Bay at Buffalo, Dallas at Las Vegas, Cincinnati at Pittsburgh, Chargers at Jacksonville, Ravens at Browns, Texans and Titans. It could be Woody Marks, SZN. All right, we got Jamie and Heath here. We're going to get right into it with our start of the week. Jamie, who are some players you love this week?
Justin Herbert is the start of the week. He, prior to last week, had been very good, at least 22.8 points in 4 games in a row. Jaguars have obviously been struggling against opposing quarterbacks. So they made Davis Mills look like a Hall of Famer last week. So love the setup for him. You mentioned Woody Marks. Love the setup for him as well. Last time he played the Titans was his best game, but he's obviously been taking slightly each week a little bit more control of the backfield until we saw last week where he played 80% of the snaps. Hopefully that continues. And then I love what Juwan Jennings has done each of the last 2 weeks. We'll see if Ricky Pearsall returns this week, but the Cardinals really struggle with number 1 wide receivers, and I think Juwan Jennings has another big game.
All right. So it's Herbert at Jacksonville. He's the start of the week. Jacksonville's been horrible against quarterbacks. Woody Marks, that's the last game we're going to talk about at Tennessee. We've had some fake outs before with Woody Marks. Are you you're more confident this week that he's here to stay?
I would be shocked if they went back to Nick Chubb plodding his way through the middle of the field as opposed to, trying to get some more explosiveness out of the backfield. And based on what DeMeco Ryan said, it feels like the takeover has happened.
All right. And then Juwan Jennings was the last one. Are you worried about pass volume in that game, though, with Marvin Harrison Jr. out?
Not necessarily. And it hasn't been on a ton of targets for Jennings recently. So if Purdy's back, I think that's even better for him because I think the connection is a little bit better between those two than it has been with, at least historically, for these two guys. With Mac Jones, not that Jones has been bad for him the last couple of games, but I just think there's an opportunity for Jennings to keep going as the, at least for now, the de facto alpha of this receiving corps.
All right. Hey, Heath.
Hi, Adam.
All right. Good morning, sir. So you've got 3 players you love as well. RJ Harvey against the Chiefs, Joe Flacco against Pittsburgh, and Khalil Shakir is a staple. You love Khalil Shakir. He's got Tampa Bay this week.
Yeah, I think, listen, it's not a great matchup for RJ Harvey. There will be at least a little bit of a split, but he has 50 carries this season. Tyler Beatty and Jaleel McLaughlin have 3. They don't have another big back to bring in and take away the carries that RJ Harvey doesn't normally get. So I do think we're going to see 15-plus touches. We were excited about this guy. He's made splash plays. He's going to get the opportunity to touch the ball 15 times. Just start him. I am starting Joe Flacco. That should surprise no one, but he is coming off of a bye. His start percentage is still just 29%. He's a top 10 quarterback for me. Of all of the streaming quarterbacks that we love this week, and there's a bunch of them, one less now with Marvin Harrison out, so we don't love Jacoby Brissett. Flacco is my favorite of that group. Get him in your starting lineup. He's going to throw the ball 40-plus times. And the Steelers defense isn't that good, especially when Flacco gets the ball out in less than 2.5 seconds, which he does on the Bengals. And then Khalil Shakir, he's been a really steady 13, 12 fantasy points. He's going to be close to 20 if he gets you a touchdown, and no Dalton Kincaid. So you might see that target volume inch up just a little bit.
There you go. All right. Sunday morning, we've got one more game in Europe, one more early game. So that means one more early show of Fantasy Football Today, 8:30 to 9:30 a.m., youtube.com/Fantasy Football Today, and then again from noon to 1. So we hope to see you there on Sunday. Today, check out Fantasy Football Today on CBS Sports Network at 1 p.m. Dave, Jamie, and Heath go through their rankings and their tiers. All right, players to avoid. So Baker Mayfield, this is an interesting one. Mayfield coming off a huge game, Heath. You have Mayfield at Buffalo, Ken Walker at the Rams, and Jordan Addison against the Bears.
Yeah, and I think Baker Mayfield's probably the most controversial of those. I know we have some disagreements in the rankings. The Bills, really miserable game last year, but for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th week in a row, they did not allow a quarterback to score more than 16 fantasy points. So they have given up a lot in the run game. I expect that Tampa Bay is going to try to establish the run in this game. Maybe you get a couple of fourth quarter touchdowns from Baker Mayfield that makes it a good day. But I don't like what we've seen from him except for last week without the top 2 wide receivers most recently. And the strangest thing He averaged 4 rush attempts per game for like the last 3 years, averaged basically 4 rush attempts per game the first 6 weeks of this season. Does not have one single rush attempt in his last 3 games.
Wow.
I
noticed that.
They have an implied total of 21, which has to be one of their lowest of the season. So I am getting away from Baker Mayfield. I would start Joe Flacco over him. Ken Walker probably seems obvious. Don't start Ken Walker. Don't start Zach Charbonnet. Don't start running back against the Rams. Definitely don't start Ken Walker. And Jordan Addison, I worry about the pass volume. I worry about Justin Jefferson hogging all of the targets. I worry about J.J. McCarthy throwing the ball within 5 yards of his wide receivers. Addison's had good success on downfield targets this year. McCarthy has not looked good throwing the ball deep.
All right, so Baker Mayfield, Ken Walker, Jordan Addison, players to avoid for Heath. Heath likes R.J. Harvey against the Chiefs. By the way, guys, I'll ask both of you, Woody Marks at Tennessee or R.J. Harvey against the Chiefs?
Marks for me.
I have Harvey.
All right.
They're both starts, though.
That's a good one. And Heath likes Harvey, Flacco, and Shakir. Jamie likes Herbert, Woody Marks, and Jawan Jennings. And I'm gonna go ahead and disagree with you, Jamie, on one of your sits. It's the first one, Sam Darnold at the Rams. I'll just say this. Rams have had a pretty easy quarterback schedule. They faced 4 good quarterbacks this year, if you count Mac Jones. 3 of them have had big games. They're so good against the run. Darnold's going to have to throw, and therefore, whenever he throws, he's great. So I like Sam Darnold, Jamie. Tell me why I'm wrong.
He certainly could have a good game. He's the one that probably makes me the most nervous of the quarterbacks I have as sits this week. But also, you look at how some of his games have unfolded, even some of his games where he's played well. He's got 6 turnovers in his last 3 games. And I think the Rams are going to get after him and make him uncomfortable. And we know what that's been for him at times in his career. And so I just think Sam Darnold falls below the 20-point threshold this week. It's a lot of great quarterbacks, but I don't expect him to have one of his best games. He's been under 10 he's been 10 fantasy points or less in 2 of his last 3. One of those they won. And so I just don't expect him to have one of his more dominant games. So we've seen throughout the season, like this is one of these guys, I think by the end of the year, we look back and say he's been a great quarterback. His fantasy production hasn't always matched his play. Yeah. And so I just don't see a big game coming for Sam Darnold. In the case of Cortland Sutton, he's really been struggling the last month. I don't think that's going to change against the Chiefs, mostly because I don't think Bo Nix is going to be better against the Chiefs, even though they're going to be at home. And in the case of Deebo Samuel, you got lucky that he scored a touchdown last week. He's been 29 yards or less in 3 or 4 starts with Marcus Mariota, and the Dolphins, as we know, don't allow a lot of production to opposing wide receivers. So I don't expect Deebo Samuel to have a great game this week also, unless he finds the end zone. And that's one thing the Dolphins have done very well is keep wide receivers out of the end zone.
And that's going to be a fun one to debate. So Jamie's 3 players to avoid were Sam Darnold, Cortland Sutton, and Deebo Samuel. Heath is a little more optimistic on Deebo Samuel, and that's a game we'll get to in a little bit. All right, it is time for football at BetMGM. Register with BetMGM to get instant access to the best variety of parlay selection features, no sweat and boost tokens, live betting options, and much more. New players can receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets with the bonus code FANTASY if they don't win their first bet. You don't want to miss out on any of the hard-hitting action at BetMGM. Place your money line, parlay bets, and more today. BetMGM, make it legendary. All right, it's time for news and notes, and we're going to find out that Heath jinxed a very good player yesterday with calling him a buy low. Then he gave him appendicitis. Thank you, Heath. But news and notes at quarterback, Lamar Jackson's got a knee issue. They say, John Harbaugh says he should be good for the game at Cleveland. J.J. McCarthy has a bruised hand. They expect him to be okay. Brock Purdy is definitely making progress. But one thing Purdy did very well last year, he ran the ball a lot, ran it very effectively. Apparently, he's going to have to deal with his toe injury all year. He's not going to be 100%. Excuse me. Joe Flacco missed practice. I guess that's not a shock, but he is dealing with a shoulder issue. And Davis Mills is prepping to start, according to KPRC2's Aaron Wilson, who had good reporting on this last week, too. Ramondre Stevenson is out tonight. Terrell Jennings is questionable. So Travion Henderson or Woody Marks?
Henderson.
Okay. Isaiah Pacheco missed.
Did you forget the biggest news at quarterback?
Yes. What?
Jameis.
Oh, we did that yesterday.
We did?
Yeah.
That was on the air?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Jameis is starting for the Giants. Okay. Pacheco missed practice. Bucky Irving returned to practice. It doesn't seem like he's quite ready to play yet, but it's something worth monitoring. Let's see. Rico Dowdle missed practice, not a surprise. He missed Wednesday's practice last week. Zonovan Knight was actually listed as limited with an ankle injury. Jaylen Warren, we said that's Jaylen Warren news. Okay, the Chris Rodriguez news, he was limited with a shoulder injury. I didn't mention this until almost an hour, almost the end of the show last week. But if you need a running back, he's 12% rostered. Chris Rodriguez, he played 17 snaps in the first half last week, and Corey Cross-Gamerett played 4. Can't guarantee you that it's going to be like that again this week, but they did give him the job last week. He's at Miami, and they've actually been good against the run lately, but for the season, not so much. All right, Jamie, what do we make of this A.J. Brown stuff? He goes on Twitch and says he's not happy. If you got me on fantasy, get rid of me. Tried to make light of it yesterday, but things are not well in A.J. Brown land.
I mean, look, he's being honest. He's frustrated. So, you don't always see this when a team is winning coming off a Super Bowl season that, somebody is continuing to be this vocal about how unhappy he is. And I mean, Nick Sirianni said he's doing his job. We're going to continue to give him opportunities. I think you just have to understand who he is as a player right now for your fantasy roster, that it's not going to be a good return on investment. So you just treat him as a low-end number 2 receiver. If you have other options, you sit him. Like I'm in 1 2-receiver league with a flex where I have, I drafted a Emeka Egbuka mid-round pick. It's easy to just sit A.J. Brown because I have 2 other great players. I forget which league it is, but 2 other great players that, Rashee Rice is one, I think. And, it's just easy to get away from him, so if you can, sit him. Like, you got to treat Devontae Smith as the best Eagles receiver at this point. He's just been more productive. And so if you're Jalen Hurts right now and you just continue to hear this over and over again, like, which play do I want to draw? Which receiver do I want to target first? It's just frustrating. It's very, very frustrating.
Dave pointed out to me that A.J. Brown's splits this year, man versus zone, are pretty dramatic. He's much, much better against man. And pretty sure the Lions are a very heavy man team. So 2 of his next 3 matchups are against teams that play a lot of man coverage. Maybe that helps, but obviously it's been a pretty bad. He's a huge bust. I mean, there's just he's not even top 40. I think he's wide receiver 40 per game. All right, Packers wide receivers. Matthew Golden was limited. Romeo Doubs is going to play at the Giants. Marvin Harrison Jr. is out at least 1 week with appendicitis. Did anybody pick up Michael Wilson?
No, several leagues, yeah.
Yeah, I picked him up in our FFT league, but only for $1 or $2. I thought there'd be a little bit more demand. Last time Harrison missed the game, he left early in the Colts game. Zay Jones had 8 targets. Wilson had 5. Greg Dortch caught a touchdown. McBride had a huge game. But
that's another part of this, though, is Zay Jones is out.
Right, he's out for the year. All right, Marvin Mims practiced in full. Parker Washington missed practice. We'll keep an eye on that. Ricky Pearsall could play this week. Kayshon Boutte is out tonight. Devontae Adams is expected to play. Drake London missed practice with an illness. Calvin Ridley was limited, so I don't think we're going to be looking at any Titans receivers against Houston this week. Darius Slayton missed practice. He had that hamstring injury. He came back, but he missed practice on Wednesday. Denver signed Lil Jordan Humphrey. Josh Palmer practiced in full. Khalil Shakir was limited, and Chris Godwin was limited. So Godwin and Bucky Irving returned to practice, but not in a way that makes us think they're playing this week. Not yet. Great news, though. Oronde Gadsden practiced in full. Brenton Strange is back at practice. We'll see what happens there. Isaiah Likely limited. Austin Hooper out tonight. Dalton Kincaid missed practice. And Sam Laporta. We'll keep an eye on Laporta. He missed practice with a back injury. I will skip the offensive line news. The defensive news you need to know about. Cincinnati, 2 defensive linemen, Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart, are doubtful. They're week to week.
There goes that defense.
Yeah. Buffalo is a lot healthier this week than they were last week. They had 2 defensive backs miss last week's game at the Dolphins. Both of them were limited. I think that means they'll probably play. Christian Benford and Teron Johnson are limited in practice. That is big for them. Marlon Humphrey, Baltimore cornerback, he is out this week. And that's a couple injuries in the Giants, but whatever. All right, we're going to take a break. We got 1 question for each game as we dig into this AFC home game slate when we come back.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, here we go. 1 question for each game. Kansas City at Denver. Heath, is 2 questions for you. If the Chiefs lose, do you think they're going to miss the playoffs? And would you start Kareem Hunt or a Broncos wide receiver?
If the Chiefs lose, I think they'll have to settle for a wild card spot.
Okay.
And full PPR, I think I might start both Broncos wide receivers. Half PPR and on, I would start Kareem Hunt.
This could be a great game, but not necessarily for fantasy. So Kareem Hunt versus Woody Marks. Who is it? Woody Marks. Who was the other running back you guys said you loved earlier?
Harvey. Both of them over Hunt.
Okay. That obviously assuming Pacheco's out. Jamie, Washington is at Miami. This game is in Spain. Are you confident in starting any Commanders players?
No.
Isn't that weird? Against the Dolphins?
They stink.
They do.
It's just Mariota's not a bad streamer just because of how he cobbles together his stats and what the Dolphins have given up. But like Chris Rodriguez is a flex. I think Debo's a flex. Starter in 3 receiver leagues at best. Ertz has not been great with Mariota, so when we're celebrating, a 9-point game from him, there's just so many better tight ends at this point. So those guys are okay, but must start no.
Okay. It is a great matchup for Ertz. The Dolphins are horrible against tight ends. Debo, Heath is a little higher on, so another teaser. We'll get to that game shortly. Tampa Bay is at Buffalo. Keep in mind, the Bills allow the fewest fantasy points to tight ends, and no tight end has more than 5 targets against the Bills. So, Heath, are you more excited about Tez Johnson or Cade Otton?
Still Cade Otton for me. And the Bills being so good against tight ends makes me a little worried about how high we have Otton ranked, but they're kind of using him as a little bit of a security blanket when guys aren't open downfield. Tez is extremely exciting, but it's pretty much entirely touchdowns. He does not have a 60-yard game, I don't think, this year. And they've got an implied total of 21. And I think they're probably going to try to at least run the ball more. So I think you're starting Tez the number 3, but I'm not quite as excited as everybody else about Tez.
Okay. Yep. 42 to 59 yards in 4 or 5 straight games, 5 straight games for Tez Johnson. Dallas is at Las Vegas. So, yeah, Jamie, it's kind of a similar question, right? You're not that excited about Washington going up against Miami. Are you excited about anyone in Las Vegas in the passing game other than Brock Bowers? So that'd be Geno and the wide receivers.
I mean, yeah, to a certain extent, again, excited. I don't know if anybody can ever get excited about starting Geno Smith, but this is the one opportunity that you would be. And I do think that plays itself into some sleepers. But again, how much you want to trust these guys and Trey Tucker and Tyler Lockett? Like, there's probably going to be again, if you just, however you expect this game to go, I expect Dallas to put up points and the Raiders to be chasing. And so that should lend itself to Geno throwing, and hopefully his receiving core steps up because almost everybody does against the Cowboys.
All right, Cincinnati's at Pittsburgh. Starter sit DK Metcalf, Heath.
I think you have to start him. I understand why people don't want to start him. It's not been good lately. The Bengals have actually been better against wide receivers than they have been against running backs and quarterbacks, but he's the clear number 1 wide receiver on a team that's expected to score a lot of points against a defense that's very bad. Just start him and hope.
That's DK Metcalf. Would you start DK Metcalf or Tez Johnson?
It'd be DK for me.
Jamie?
Same.
DK Metcalf or the very safe Khalil Shakir?
I've got DK.
I would take Metcalf too.
All right. The Chargers are at the Jaguars. Jamie, how many wide receivers do you trust in this game?
Trust 1.
And that is McConkey?
Yeah.
Who's your second favorite wide receiver?
Rondé Gadsden the second. Quentin Johnson. I don't trust any of the Jaguars.
Okay. Yeah. You know, what do we keep asking about Parker Washington? Is he going to be the next Chimere DK? Well, Chimere DK, who did he have that horrible game against? It was the Chargers. He had 1 catch for 5 yards or on 3 targets, or 1 catch for 3 yards on whatever it was. So we'll get it. Yeah. All right. We'll talk more about Parker Washington. He was really good 2 weeks in a row. Baltimore at Cleveland.
Really good as a stretch from last week.
That's true. Yeah, I forgot because we don't do punt return touchdown points because that'd be silly.
He was really good in my leagues.
Baltimore at Cleveland. All right. We got a lot of guys to rank here. Heath, rank Derrick Henry, Quinshon Judkins, Zay Flowers, and Jerry Jeudy.
Jerry Jeudy's last. I would start Henry over Judkins. I would start Flowers over Judkins. Henry, Flowers, Judkins, Judy. Full PPR.
Oh, I don't even think I mentioned that Brian Thomas Jr. was limited in practice, by the way. So that could be another thing that clouds things up for Parker Washington and for Brian Thomas. Okay, so you said Henry, Flowers, Judkins, Judy?
Yep.
Jamie, how would you rank those four?
Same way.
Henry, Flowers, Judkins. Yeah, Judkins has really been struggling in the last 4 weeks. I have some good numbers on him. And then Houston at Tennessee. My question was, is it Woody Marks, SZN? I make fun of people who say SCN. I don't know if anybody says that anymore. I'll ask a different question.
No one says SZN.
Well, I don't think anyone does the season thing anymore.
They say season.
That's because it's pretty much over, though. But they don't type out SCN. It's over, right?
No, I think people still do it.
They shouldn't. Are you going right back to Nico Collins, like confidently?
1 billion%.
Okay. It was a kind of a lucky game for him last week. I didn't even realize he caught a 54-yard Hail Mary at the end of the first half. It's kind of ridiculous. And then he caught like a 22-yard pass in double coverage where he got crunched.
Yeah, we hate when great players make great plays.
Yeah, I did not think Davis Mills played very well till the fourth quarter. Okay, Kansas City's at Denver. Here we go. Stat of the game. It's not really a great stat, but Patrick Mahomes, he was great against Denver twice in 2022, but 3 games since then, he's been really bad. All 3 games for fantasy. So starters sit Jamie Patrick Mahomes.
I'm still starting him. He's not ranked in the top 5 like he has been in recent weeks when he's been playing because he didn't play last week. But in the case of this matchup, they're down 2 of their defenders. At least that's the expectation. Patrick Surtain and Alex Singleton. And with Rashee Rice, because he didn't have him in the 2 games last year, or the 1 game last year, he didn't play in week 18. I think that Rice will still have success, maybe not to his usual heights, but still have success. I think Travis Kelce actually shows up in this game. And if they can protect Mahomes, that's the biggest thing. You know, as long as they can keep the pass rush off him enough time for him to make plays and then probably use his legs, I think he's good enough to still be a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
And I do think they have Josh Simmons back. He had a full practice.
Yeah. Yeah, that helps.
I just did a quick Twitter search, and there's about 50 SZN tweets in the last 4 minutes.
And someone put in the chat, what SZNING do you put on your burgers, Adam?
You don't have to read the letters. It's seasoning. What seasoning?
I have to tell the audience like what they wrote. You know, it's
everybody knows. Everybody knows what season is SZN.
I actually just made burgers the other night. A lot of barbecue sauce, just like smothered it in the raw meat. It was good. Don't approve.
You shouldn't need it. Just make a good burger.
I can't.
I guess if you're baking it, you probably need some flavor.
I don't do that anymore. Flacco or Mahomes?
Mahomes.
No,
if you're gonna go Mahomes over Flacco,
we're not starting any one of those borderline starters over Mahomes.
Jalen Hurts or Mahomes?
I go Mahomes.
Still Mahomes.
All right. Ooh, how about Kareem Hunt? Why are you guys? How are we feeling about Kareem Hunt?
He's a like the Chiefs starting running back mostly has been all season. He's a flex that you hope scores a touchdown.
Touchdown or bust. I like him better than the Seahawks guys, than the Bucks guys, than Manon guy. I don't know. I'm trying to think guys in that range. Like he's 24th for me.
What about Judkins or Hunt?
Judkins easily. Like even against the Bills, who the Chiefs should have run the ball 35 times, he had 11 carries.
I will tell you why though, right? They were losing. They were trailing 28-13 going into the fourth quarter, and they only had the ball for 25 minutes and 15 seconds. So I'm not saying he's going to get 20 carries, but I think 11 was pretty game script. He got game scripted a little.
I just think like we're in week 11, speaking of 11, and we've seen it all year long. Like there's just not going to be a running back that has a huge carry total for the Chiefs.
Just to Adam's point, though, it's one game without Pacheco being there, though. And in that one game, they were chasing. Like you would expect if the Broncos offense continues to perform like it has been, where they're terrible in the first 3 quarters. And in the case of last week, they were terrible for 4 quarters. The Chiefs coming off a bye, I'm sure that they're, have a few different wrinkles as Andy Reid often does. And they should, hopefully, if you're, banking on the Chiefs fantasy options, playing with a lead that benefits Kareem.
Right. They're a 3.5-point favorite. I don't know. I'm 15 carries.
I would say that's a safe number. And if it's 14.5, I would take the over. 15.5, I'd probably take the under.
Okay. All right. It is a very good run defense, though. I mean,
and still, I would say if it's 14 or 15 carries, you're still just praying for a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing changing about how you should view him. Like, it's not like he's going to come out and be a 4-catch guy because they're not going to use him in that capacity, and he's not going to get 25 carries unless they're just absolutely blowing them out. So you just have to understand what you're dealing with here. So when you start to compare him to some of those other running backs that are in crappy situations with bad matchups, okay, no Pacheco, most likely. Here's an opportunity for Hunt to kind of continue to do what he's done. 3 of his last 5 games, he scored a touchdown. So if he finds the end zone, you're good.
All right, Chiefs wide receivers. We're going to start Rashee Rice. Heath, you didn't like Jordan Addison very much. Would you start Addison or Xavier Worthy?
Addison.
Okay. It's really tough to trust Xavier Worthy coming off a 6 fantasy point game. He hasn't scored more than 10.6 in 5 games. And Travis Kelce. Jamie, you said you like Kelce. You have him 5th. Heath has him 7th. Dave has him 9th. You like him this
I think
week?
he's a little bit lower now because Gaston's in, but he's in that range.
Okay. 12 points PPR? Around there? What do you think?
Yeah, I think he had 20 in his only game against his defense last year. But Rashee Rice wasn't there, obviously.
He played the toughest matchup last week or 2 weeks ago, last game. Kelce had 4 catches for 66 yards, 12.6 fantasy point. Must have had a 2-point conversion too. At Buffalo. All right. Bo Nix is a sit. I don't know that we have to get too deep into that. Let's talk about RJ Harvey. Who has more carries, RJ Harvey or Kareem Hunt?
I would hope it's Harvey.
I have Harvey projected for the same number of carries as Kareem Hunt.
Which is?
14.
Oh, okay. All right. 14. I like it. He's been running more routes on 1st and 2nd down each of the last 2 weeks. They basically took Dobbins. Dobbins doesn't do that anymore. So he was already more involved in that capacity. But it's not like Dobbins was catching passes. He's not replacing that. And then let's talk about the matchup. So the Chiefs, 7th fewest fantasy points allowed to running backs, but they do give up 4.4 yards per carry to running backs. So I don't really know how to approach this matchup. They don't see a lot of rush attempts. 4th fewest running back attempts they see per game. So that's been the issue. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, is it a tough matchup, Heath, for Harvey?
It's not one of the matchups. Like I've talked about this a lot in the past. I don't know about this year, but there's usually like 5 maybe good matchups at most each week and 5 maybe bad matchups at most each week, according to the way that I look at it. And this is not one of those.
Okay. Let's
Either
do
way.
some Harvey versus wide receivers. Harvey or Teteroa McMillan at Atlanta?
Harvey.
Harvey or Metcalf against the Bengals?
I'll take Metcalf.
I'm still going to go Harvey.
Harvey or Higgins?
Higgins.
I'll stick with Harvey.
Interesting. Okay. Last one. Harvey or Harvey or Zay Flowers?
I'll take Harvey.
Yeah.
All right. And then let's finish off. Which Denver wide receiver do you prefer, Jamie?
Franklin slightly.
Sutton slightly, but neither one's really a start.
Yeah, both number 3 receivers. I also think we got to keep an eye on who's going to be the second Broncos running back. So if you want to get ahead of this, just in case Dobbins goes on IR and just in case Harvey's not the guy, I'm thinking it's going to be Tyler Bidet, but there's no confidence there. So I picked him up in a bunch of leagues just to stash him, just in case. Like I'm with Heath. Look, I'm hopeful Harvey comes out and plays well. Like you said, this is not an easy matchup, and he's still a rookie running back that they've been clearly hesitant to give a lot of work. He's got 1 game with double digits carries so far this season, and it was against Cincinnati when they're blowing him out. So if it's the split, and if the other guy, again, could be Bidet, could be McLaughlin, does do something, like you want to make sure you don't have to spend a lot of fab on that. So if you have an open roster spot, do something now.
It's a good call. And I'm going to be deciding between Kamani Vidal and RJ Harvey, and I'm probably going to go with Vidal for the kind of more safe role. But Vidal has some really horrible games sometimes, you know?
Every other.
Yeah, every other, right. So he's due. And the Jaguars do have a very good run defense. I haven't made that decision yet, But we haven't really seen enough from RJ Harvey. He's got, like I said, terrible metrics, a lot of like really bad runs. He does have big play potential. Also,
I think the thing again, you hope for if you game script this out a certain way, they're chasing points, and he's clearly been someone that they like in the passing game.
Yeah, that's true. By the way, do you like Troy Franklin and Sutton better than Xavier Worthy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, they're around 30th in the rankings, both of those wide receivers. Chiefs DST is top 7. Starters at the Broncos DST this week, guys.
I think it comes down to, what your team looks like, and do you want to stash them through their bye week? Look, it's not easy. We know how the Chiefs play. Mahomes will take a sack or two. Probably gets 5 sacks, but 3 of them are called back by penalty. And then there'll be a turnover or 2, but that's minimal. Again, they're missing 2 key guys.
Yeah. They have Washington and Las Vegas coming out of the bye, though, so it's tempting to keep them. All right. Heath likes the Broncos DST. Jamie's, you can see, a little hesitant. Let's go to Spain. Washington's at Miami. Stat of the game: the Dolphins have allowed 59 yards or a touchdown to a tight end in 8 of 10 games. Anyone want to start Zach Ertz?
I'm not excited about starting Zach Ertz, but he is a top 12 tight end, so I think he's 12th for me. It has not been great with Marcus Mariota. This is a fantastic matchup. The tight end position, we've had so many guys emerge, but I don't actually really like it very much in the projections this week. But he's a borderline starter.
He's in that like blob of guys where you can see a path to success, but you could also see just a little bit of potential pitfalls. And for Ertz, for what it's worth, we saw it last week, and maybe it's a sign of things to come. Ben Sinnott caught a touchdown.
Yeah.
The receiving core is so bad right now.
It is really bad. One of the things that's really interesting, let's talk about Deebo Samuel here. He has 4 targets of 10 or more air yards in his last 4 games. On the good side, they're designing, I had 2 pop passes inside the 5-yard line for him. They got him open on his touchdown last week. They're designing some easy things for him, but I mean, he's not getting open, and they're not throwing the ball. I don't even want to say downfield, but I mean, 10 or more air yards. I'm not even asking for 20 or more air yards. They're just not giving him the ball anything other than these really simple screens and stupid stuff like that. So anyway, I've been mentioning this. Jamie's got Deebo 34th, Dave 38th. Heath, why don't you make a case for him as you have him 25th?
Yeah, again, I don't have him as a start, so he's a number 3 wide receiver. I do think the way that they scheme him and the touches they give him around the line of scrimmage are the types of things that you could have success against the Dolphins on. Like they've really struggled against tight ends. They've really struggled against running backs. Deebo gets touches in that area of the field on occasion. He also gets rush attempts. I think this would be a good game to hand him the ball a couple of times. So I think there's a chance that he gets a short area target or 2 that turns into a big play. Not really hoping for a lot of downfield stuff.
Here's his numbers in 4 games with Mariota. Week 3 against Las Vegas, 3 targets, 2 catches, 11 yards. Against Atlanta, 6 catches, 72 yards, and a touchdown. Against Kansas City, 6 targets, 3 catches, 11 yards. Against Detroit, 5 targets, 4 catches, 29 yards, and a touchdown. Like, it's miserable.
2 of those games, McLaurin did play. 2 of them he did not. But everything's just been so bad for this offense. How about Chris Rodriguez? How about a Commanders running back, Jamie?
I think Rodriguez is worth using as a flex. More so in non and half PPR than PPR because they're not going to throw him the ball. But he has scored a touchdown each of the last 2 games. Like you said, he's been seemingly taking over this backfield. I guess they're probably frustrated with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt at this point and his lack of production. That could certainly change in this game. I agree with you, though. The Dolphins' run defense has been better. You even start with the Browns game where Judkins scored 3 touchdowns. It was a grind. 23 carries or 24 carries for 84 yards. Like, it didn't have a dominant game with all that work, given what you expected from that matchup. Then they come back and they shut down Bijan Robinson. They did a very good job against James Cook last week. I might be missing a game in there, but
Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry had a bad first half, but then he had a huge second half. He ended up with a big game. I didn't score though.
And that's a Lamar Jackson game on Thursday night too. So it's hard to say like that's the norm, but they've been better. Especially you go back to the Rico Dowdle game. Like what they were looking like at the early middle part of the season like was absolutely atrocious. Like it was just a layup. And I don't think that's the case anymore. So I wouldn't surprise me if Rodriguez falls in the end zone, but I wouldn't say he's a must-start guy by any stretch.
Okay. And then, one other thing just to note about that is that they did trade Jalen Phillips. They have played one game without him, but he's a good run defender. So we'll see if that ends up making a difference. Heath, the Dolphins are pretty easy. Go ahead and talk about the Dolphins.
You start HN, you start Waddle. Tua is in that massive group of quarterbacks we don't normally start that we might want to start this week.
Es el partido de la semana, sí. Los Commanders contra los Dolphins. Fútbol americano en España, sí. Es el partido de la semana hoy.
Excellent. Well done. Thanks for keeping that brief. Yeah. And then I think Tua's a streamer that could be a disaster, but it's a great matchup. Washington's defense is in contention for the worst in the NFL over the last month.
So just talk to me about the quarterbacks in around Tua and Mariota.
I would still start Mariota over Tua. I would start Flacco over Tua. I would start Rodgers over Tua. I would start Tua over Bo Nix, and I would start Tua over Baker Mayfield, but I'm alone in that one.
Ooh. Mariota over Tua. That's interesting. Jamie, you're 5 spots higher on Tua than Heath is.
Again, Heath said it. The Commanders have been absolutely atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. They're terrible. And they just lost another defender with Deron Payne not playing this game. Like, this is the type of game where Tua should have success. And it's actually pretty cool for both these guys. It's the first time that they're playing against each other, both from Hawaii. So we'll see how this, plays into that narrative at all. And Tua has talked about that he grew up idolizing Mariota. So I'm excited for Tua. I picked him up in a bunch of leagues to see if this is going to be something. And then coming back from their bye, they get New Orleans and the Jets. Like, there's some favorable matchups here for him. So he's not somebody you want to heavily invest in, clearly. But if there's ever a game for him to play well in, Washington is miserable.
Yeah. And they are. It's insane. Okay. So Heath gave some names. I don't see anything in the chat here, but anyway, that's Tua and Mariota. Real quick on the chat, Debo or Christian Watson, PPR?
Still Debo.
Debo.
Yeah, because remember, Dobbs is back. Golden might play. Debo or Zay Flowers?
Zay
Flowers.
Debo or Michael Wilson?
Still Debo.
Debo.
Ertz or Fant? Ertz or Fannin?
Fannin.
All right, let's go to our next game. First, let's go to commercial break. We'll be right back with Tampa Bay at Buffalo after this.
When you need your sports news all the time,
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Tampa Bay's at Buffalo, and Bills secondary looking like it's getting healthier. That's good. The Bills, their last 5 games, they're 18th in points per game. They're 9th in yards per game. They're just struggling to put points on the board to the point where Sean McDermott had to defend his offensive coordinator, Joe Brady.
Maybe let your generational quarterback throw the ball a little more, and you'll score more.
Yeah, right. They only have 2 games where he's really thrown a lot, and they were losses to. Oh no, it was that win against Buffalo, crazy win, and the loss to Miami last week. All right, so
Who's the win against?
The win was against Baltimore.
You said Buffalo. We won against Baltimore in week 1.
That's what I meant. Yeah, the win against Baltimore.
And I wasn't asking to make fun of you. I was asking because I generally forgot who it was, but you said Buffalo.
Yeah, no, it was the Buffalo-Baltimore game in week 1. Okay, so let's knock the Bills out real quick here. Start Josh Allen, start James Cook. Any interest in Keon Coleman or Khalil Shakir is Khalil Shakir. But any interest in Keon Coleman?
No.
I think Keon Coleman's an interesting play. Josh Palmer actually is back, so just keep an eye on that. So they have another receiver to potentially lean on here. But you saw it last week, 8 targets for Coleman. I wouldn't be surprised if without Kincaid there, he gets a few more opportunities. But he's in that, like there's a few very good desperation plays this week that you can sort of point to. You brought up one on Tuesday, Calvin Austin, just a matchup against the Bengals. I actually like Malik Washington, scored a touchdown 2 of his last 3 games. Jaden Higgins, He's playing well of late. Tyler Lockett, great matchup against the Cowboys coming off a good game. And I think Keon Coleman's in that type of range. Michael Wilson, clearly picking him up because of Marvin Harrison. So if you're kind of just scouring the waiver wire and a lot of people drop Keon Coleman, wouldn't be awful to trust him this week. There's not there, he's 45th at best, but like again,
Right.
third receiver flex, I'm stuck. I wouldn't be opposed to taking a flyer on him.
I would go with Wilson over Coleman. Would you, Michael Wilson?
Yes, but again, I mean, we're talking about replacement options that could play well,
Sure.
versus anything that's, oh my god, I got to start this guy.
And we're not going to start Dawson Knox, even though he does tend to score touchdowns when Kincaid's out.
So he's in that group. Like for me, with Ertz, I would start Ertz over him. But you start to look at Freiermuth in his matchup. You look at Ertz in his matchup. You look at Knox and his opportunity here. There's again this position is so deep. It's surprising.
So I guess the question really is, are the Bucs going to hold up their end of the bargain? The Bills are 5.5-point favorites. Obviously, Heath, with your ranking of Baker Mayfield, I wonder if you're thinking that they won't score that many points. But what kind of offensive output do you expect from Tampa Bay?
I generally start with the Vegas implied total, and then if I have a reason to believe otherwise, I will, but I don't really. So 21 points for Tampa Bay. And the question is, can they've not been able to run the ball as well as they want to for a lot of games. The Bills are one of the best run defense matchups there is in the league. How much success can they have running, and when they get in the red zone, can they turn it into touchdowns and not field goals?
My hearing sounds like someone's at a farm.
There's a bird outside my window. It would like to come in. It's trying to come in. I'm not going to let it.
Don't let it in. Don't let it in. All right. So, Jamie, you make the support Baker Mayfield here, because Heath is sitting Mayfield if possible.
So I see the Bills scoring on the Bucs. I don't trust the Bucs run game unless Sean Tucker comes out and has a big game, because Rachaad White just hasn't been that guy. And Baker, and Heath is right about this, his receiving core obviously has changed throughout the course of the season, when you were talking about it earlier in the one question per game. But if you look at what Baker has done against, at the time, great matchups or good matchups, Atlanta, 28.6 points. Houston, 23.9 points. Against the Eagles, 22.9 points. At Seattle, 30.7 points. And I think New England, I know their secondary and their pass production not great, but I consider that a good defense, 28.9 points. So in tough matchups, he's come through. I think they're going to have to throw. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. It's a high-scoring game on the slate. So I'm expecting Baker to have to play well in this game, and I think he will, which is why I think there's going to be an uptick in targets for Tez Johnson. I think there'll be enough production from Cade Otton, even in a tough matchup. And, you mentioned this about Sam Darnold. Yes, the Bills have done well against quarterbacks. Look at who they've faced.
Yeah, right. The Bills have any good quarterbacks struggled against the Bills?
Yes, Mahomes struggled against it. It's not a knock that their defense is good. It's great. But the majority, they're number 4 in fewest fantasy points allowed. Justin Fields, Tua twice, Spencer Rattler, Michael Penix, Andy Dalton. Like, that's going to build your resume in a pretty impressive way.
Yeah. But yeah, Drake May had a bad game, and Mahomes.
Yes. And for May, he played very well. He just didn't get touchdowns.
Okay. Well, one of the issues is that teams that have such a terrible run defense, right? A lot of times that hides weaknesses in the pass defense, and guys run all over the Bills. They allow 5.36 yards per carry to running backs. So can Sean Tucker, Heath take advantage of that? Rachaad White, like, how do you feel about the Bucs running backs?
I don't think you have enough touches for either one of them to be really excited about them. So I would still start White over Tucker. They're both flexes at best. I think Tucker is much more likely to get going and like break a long run against this defense, but I don't really want to start either one. They're both sits.
I think in the case of how Heath views this game, correct me if I'm wrong, if they're going to have success running the ball, then you should buy into Sean Tucker to some extent, because I don't think it's going to be White. And if you think that they're going to be chasing points like I do, you probably buy into White a little bit more, because he's going to be on the field in obvious pass down situation. Now, I agree with what he said. Don't start either one, because it's too tricky. It's not like Sean Tucker's been that amazing that he's guaranteed to play well. The wild card in all this is, what if Bucky Irving comes back?
Yeah, we'll reassess. So
And I would be more inclined to get excited about Sean Tucker because I do think he's a better rusher than Rachaad White right now, but White still had more carries last week.
you had one right. It was 9 for Tucker and 10 for White, and White is just on the field more because he's on passing downs as well. So would you start Ken Walker over a Bucs running back?
I would start White, Walker, Tucker.
Yeah.
Now that's full PPR. What about, say, half PPR?
White, Walker, Tucker.
Probably be Walker, White, Tucker then for me.
We just did Game of Thrones with White Walker, and we almost did Breaking Bad with Walker White. So
Who's Walker White?
Walter White.
Oh, it's not the same.
I said almost. Tampa Bay wide receiver, start Emeka Egbuka. Tez Johnson is 20th for Jamie and 36 for Heath. I think you're just seeing the difference in how these guys view the Bucs offense in this game. Jamie's expecting more from the passing game than Heath is. And then Kate Otten, yeah, I mean, you're just going for it with him. He's been so good. And the Bills, have they faced any good tight ends?
Yeah.
Kelsey.
What's that?
Kelsey, right?
Mark Andrews, 1.5 fantasy points. Juwan Johnson, 5.8. Kyle Pitts, 4.8. Travis Kelce, 4 catches, 66 yards on 5 targets. That's the most targets that any tight end has had against Buffalo. It's scary, but I can't get Otten out of my lineup. He's just been so good going back to last year whenever Evans is out. And he's top 5 or 6. So we're saying to start Kate Otten. I probably won't put him in a DFS lineup for what it's worth. I think that's it for this game.
That's how you win if he does well.
I guess that's true. I'm not very good at DFS, so don't listen to me on that. Buffalo DST, Heath likes.
Hey, happy birthday, Joshua.
Not so much. We got a birthday? Hey, Josh. All right. Happy birthday, buddy. I'm going to read some questions here. Brock Purdy or Baker Mayfield?
Baker.
I would start either 49ers quarterback over Baker Mayfield. So whoever starts.
Tez Johnson or DJ Moore?
Tez.
Pick 2. Khalil Shakir, George Pickens, Wan'Dale Robinson.
I would sit Shakir.
So Pickens is the easy one here. It's between the other two, and I think I have them back to back. I've got Wan'Dale just behind. And Adam, do you think with Jameis starting, we should shift a little target share from Wan'Dale to Darius Slayton because Jameis is just going to let it fly?
I was actually going to say I'm kind of concerned about Slayton. I want to see if he practices today.
Yeah.
When he came back, I don't know that I got to see how many targets he got, but he got most of his production before the hamstring injury, 1 catch after the hamstring injury. So I'm not quite ready to make any shift towards Slayton, but I just think Winston just throws a ton, right? He's not going to run nearly as much as Dart. He's going to throw more than Wilson. So we're sitting Shakir, or
I'm sitting Wan'Dale.
I think the upside for Wan'Dale right now is amazing. Like, remember the first game without Slayton?
No.
It was like 7 for 95 and a touchdown.
Without Neighbors and Slayton, you're saying?
Yep.
Tez or Tucker?
Tez.
Yeah, Tez.
All right. Moving on to our next game. Dallas is at Las Vegas. Repeat stat of the game. Every quarterback or team quarterback has finished top 12 against the Dallas Cowboys in that particular week. New stat of the game. CeeDee Lamb has kind of taken over the end zone, the red zone and end zone targets from George Pickens since he's come back. I don't know if that will stick, but George Pickens has 1 red zone and 1 end zone target since Lamb returned. It's been very good, though. Anyway, Dallas at Las Vegas. Real quick, Dak Prescott. Easy start?
Top 5 quarterback.
Yep.
Javonte Williams. Not a bad run defense here. Not that bad.
Must start.
Yeah?
Must start.
He is the worst receiving back in the NFL. You realize that? Among 32 running backs, 20 more targets. Last or second to last in yards per target, yards per catch, yards per route run, and yak. Weird.
How has that impacted his fantasy production this season?
I mean, he had 7 points last week. He had 8 points 4 weeks ago.
I would guess, unless your team is loaded, you're starting Javonte Williams.
I agree. Who's the best running back in this game?
Javonte.
Start Lamb. Pickens.
Start.
Yeah.
Solid number 2 receiver. 9 targets each of his last 2 games.
All right. How about Ferguson? He has a 15% target share since Lamb returned, but that's 7 targets, 1 target, 7 targets. Raiders are pretty good. 5th best against tight ends. Starter sit Ferguson.
Still a must start for me.
Starting him.
Gadsden or Ferguson?
Gadsden.
Yes.
Otten or Ferguson?
Ferguson for me.
It's Otten.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Kittle at Arizona or Ferguson?
Kittle.
All right, that's the Cowboys. Basically start the Cowboys. Jamie, what about the Raiders?
Again, I think Geno is in the streaming conversation here. So, hopefully he takes advantage of the Cowboys matchup. He's been good in half of his games with Brock Bowers on the field, and that's not taking into account when Bowers was healthy, when he wasn't. So last week Bowers was healthy. Geno did not play well. But I think you just the expectation should be that to whatever degree the Cowboys' run defense got better because they added Quinnen Williams and they added Logan Wilson. Does that mean you're sitting Ashton Jeanty? No. Does that mean it's going to be a top 5 week for Ashton Jeanty? It still could be, but the chances of that got a little bit worse. So he is borderline number 1, number 2 running back, but just call him must start. Bowers must start. Geno, questionable start. Depends on who you have. Again, for me, I would start Flacco, Rodgers, Tua, and Mariota ahead of him. Debatable between Brissett and him, even without Harrison there. That's just the Geno concerns. But I think Geno deserves at least a bit benefit of the doubt that with his complement of weapons versus Brissett not having his, in any event. And then Tucker and Lockett are flyers. I would still lean Tucker over Lockett, but Lockett was a go-to guy for the Raiders in the first game without Jacoby Myers. They can't be overlooked. So desperation play, I think he's not a bad, as Gil just typed in the chat, good dart throw.
Who, Trey Tucker?
Lockett.
Lockett.
I would go Tucker over Lockett, but
okay, Lockett.
Lockett, not a bad desperation flyer.
So I'd probably ask.
I was hoping personally, Jack Best, Dante Thornton play better, get more involved. They went to the 34-year-old wide receiver.
So I should probably ask you this, but
or 32, whatever.
You're looking at your waiver wire. You got Michael Wilson out there. You got Trey Tucker. You got Calvin Austin. Let's say, who's your favorite?
Tucker.
I would think that conversation should be Lockett more so than Tucker because A, Tucker's more rostered, and B, I would give him a little bit more benefit of the doubt.
All right, but he's got 7 targets in his last 2 games.
No. He has not played great, but his body of work, at least with this team, has been better.
Yeah. All right. By the way, so the Cowboys give up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. If you look at the 2 matchups most similar to Dallas that Geno Smith has played, I would have to say it'd be Washington and Jacksonville.
Yep.
He scored 32 or more points in both of them. He also struggled against Chicago. He struggled against Tennessee. He's only 21% rostered as of yesterday. So I know a lot of people aren't going to be starting him, but he could obviously have a big game. And then with the defensive additions for the Cowboys, any hesitation to start Ashton Jeanty?
No, I'm starting Ashton Jeanty. He's in the top 14 discussion. Not even thinking about it.
How about
the only scenario for me that I could think of is Henderson and Rico Dowdle.
Okay, what about RJ Harvey or Woody Marks versus Jeanty?
Jeanty.
I have Jeanty ahead of those guys.
Okay. And then what about that bum Brock Bowers from last week?
Good start.
Okay. I got some chat questions here for this game. It is.
And Corey brings up a good point. Raiders offensive line is a little bit of a mess.
It's true.
So just keep that in mind.
Flacco or Daco?
Dak.
You have to say Daco. This is from last game. I'll do it anyway. Sean Tucker or Tyler Algier?
Oh, that's close. I probably lean Tucker, but wouldn't surprise me if Algier's better just based on the touchdowns.
Ferguson or Goddard?
Ferguson.
I've got Goddard 1 spot higher, I think. Yep.
Cowboys or Seahawks DST? Seahawks against the Rams.
I'd go Cowboys.
Cowboys.
I think we're going to get a very emotional Cowboys team coming off what they dealt with, and this is take it out on the Raiders.
Henderson or Javonte Williams? Trayvon Henderson or Javonte?
I like Henderson better.
It's still Javonte for me.
And Trey Tucker or Jerry Jeudy?
Tucker.
Okay. All right, that's it for that game. Let's go to Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. Heath, do you feel like this game is going to play out similarly to the first one, which was a bonanza?
Yeah, pretty much. It's 49.5 over under. I'm starting both quarterbacks. I'm starting both running backs. I'm starting 3 wide receivers. And probably one of the Steelers tight ends will be awesome.
All right, yeah. So how about this? Flacco or Rodgers?
Flacco.
Warren or Chase Brown?
Warren.
Love Warren this week.
So, yeah, I mean, Warren was so good the first time against them. It was 16 carries, 127 yards, 4 catches, 31 yards. Also, they traded Logan Wilson, and they've been sort of phasing Logan Wilson out in Cincinnati.
It shouldn't matter.
Well, I'll just give you this stat. 4.8. They allow 4.8 yards per carry to running backs with Wilson on the field and 6.1 with him off the field. So phasing him out didn't really work in that regard. So why isn't Flacco higher, guys? Like he's been 28 or more fantasy points in 3 straight games, including against Pittsburgh. Jamie, you have him 11th. Heath, you have him 10th. Dave has him 7th. Heath, why isn't Flacco even higher?
I think just a little bit of a concern that he's going to come back to earth at some point and not be quite as elite as he clearly has been. And a little bit of concern that the last 2 weeks, the Steelers have faced Daniel Jones and Justin Herbert and given up 15 fantasy points to each of them. The defense has looked better. This is a bad Bengals offensive line. Flacco's done a great job of getting the ball out quick, so it hasn't mattered as much. But we know that edge rush from Pittsburgh has been much better recently, and that could give Flacco trouble.
And where were the last 3 games, Adam?
Were they all home?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how about that? He scored 22.8 fantasy points in his only road game with Cincinnati. That was at Green Bay.
I think that's kind of where he is. Like he's averaging 30 points per game. He's been absolutely fantastic. I think he's going to be a top 10-ish quarterback this week. It's a great week for quarterbacks. So you should be starting him, as Heath said, 29%, right? That was the start percentage. Yep. Like that's very low, and I'm sure that's because he's sitting on a lot of benches because people haven't set their lineups yet. But like there's huge upside clearly, but I wouldn't go into this expecting 470 and 4.
Right.
Like he had in his last game. Like this feels like a 322 and 2 type game.
Okay. And Chase, by the way, Darius Slay in the concussion protocol for Pittsburgh, so that should help the Bengals passing game. Chase Brown, he played 96% of the snaps last week. Was anybody tempted to put him as, a top 12 guy?
No, but it coincides. His recent stretch of fantasy production coincides with the Steelers game. He had 100 yards rushing that game. I certainly would not expect that. He had 14 targets, I'm not mistaken, 2 games ago or 2 weeks ago when they played. I wouldn't expect that either. But like he's going to be involved. Clearly, Samaje Perine still dealing with a high ankle sprain.
Yeah, and when they played their last game against the Bears, 14 targets. Yeah.
For whatever it's worth. We talked about the Steelers being better against quarterbacks recently. The last 3 running backs they've faced, Josh Jacobs, 2.5 yards per carry. Jonathan Taylor, 3.2. Kamani Vidal had a good week last week, but it was still just 3.8 yards per carry. They've been better against the run lately too.
Yeah.
He's got to be involved in the passing game. He's got, that's the only way I think he's going to have, aside from maybe scoring 2 touchdowns. Like this feels like a 40-yard rushing game for him again.
Yeah. Well, with Perine out, he should definitely be on the field more in the passing game. Perine wasn't getting a lot of targets. Start Jamar Chase, start T. Higgins. Noah Fant's desperation. He hasn't really been that bad, but he gets 3 to 4 targets per game. Pittsburgh stinks against tight ends, though, but they've been good against tight ends 2 straight games, too.
And part of that was Gatson getting hurt, too.
But he had 13 yards on 6 targets. That's why I included that, but you're right.
Fair. Another guy just in the desperation plays is Yoshivas. He's been a guy that Flacco's leaned on in two games in a row, I believe.
Someone's confused. I did not say Darius Slayton was in concussion protocol. I said Darius Slay was in concussion protocol. Slay is the Steelers cornerback. He once was an Eagles cornerback, and he matched up against Darius Slayton. All right, Aaron Rodgers is about 12th in the rankings. I think I have some Rodgers questions in the chat we'll get to. Jalen Warren is top 12 in the rankings. DK Metcalf, is it kind of blind faith at this point?
Yes, and for what it's worth, the Bengals have been good against opposing number 1 receivers. But, and any situation where you're expecting Rodgers to probably be 35 plus pass attempts, looking at this receiving core, I know they got 4 touchdowns from their tight ends in the last time these two teams met, and this team is absolutely brutal against tight ends. So should be good for Freiermuth if you're looking for a streaming option. But it is blind faith. It's hope that Rodgers can connect with Metcalf on a play or two where he finds the end zone. He just hasn't been good when he doesn't score.
And the stat I gave about Calvin Austin is that he's had 5 to 7 targets in 5 of his 6 healthy games. There have been 11 wide receivers with 5 to 7 targets against the Bengals, and 8 of them scored 12.5 or more PPR fantasy points. So Austin, I guess he didn't play in that game. Was that the Roman Wilson game? He didn't play against in the first matchup.
He might have come back right after that. Yes.
But look, it's a sleeper. He's 26% rostered. Any interest in a Pittsburgh tight end? This is the best matchup.
Yes.
Freiermuth?
Yeah, I just said that. Freiermuth is a great streamer for this week.
All right. Over who?
I would start him over Ertz personally. I'd start him over Henry. I'd start him over Hawkinson. He's like 15th. So
Heath, thoughts on Freiermuth?
If he is the most targeted Steelers tight end like he has been the last couple of weeks, then I think he could be a very good streamer. I think there's a risk every week that it's a different tight end that scores the touchdown.
Yeah. Jamie's got him one spot ahead of Colston Loveland. Heath does not. But that's kind of good flyers in this game. All right, Chargers are at the Jaguars. So the only stat, the kind of interesting stat is just to keep an eye on. If Brenton Strange plays, Travis Etienne has had a 7.2% target share when Strange was healthy and an 11.7% target share when Strange was out. Big increase in target per route run rate too. So I don't know if that'll hold up, but it became much more of a factor in the passing game when Strange got hurt. Who do we like in this game, Heath? Jaguars and Chargers.
So I'm still starting Justin Herbert. He's Jamie's start of the week. So we obviously like him. Kamani Vidal's a start. Travis Etienne's a start. Lad McConkey's a start. Aronde Gadsden's a start. That's pretty much the I definitely want to start these guys list.
Aronde Gadsden is a great start this week, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. A tight end has scored double-digit fantasy points in 6 straight games in PPR against the Jaguars. They are just so bad against the pass. So what we saw last week was Justin Herbert against the Steelers. 63.6% of his throws were in under 2.5 seconds, which was by far his season high. Heath, we've talked about it. They're a different offense without Joe Alt, but now here comes this horrible defense in this great matchup. I know you just talked about Herbert. You guys are starting him very confidently, but what about Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen?
I don't think you can have any confidence in either one of those guys on a weekly basis. It seems like what we've said is one of these guys is going to lose every week. And what it seems to have narrowed down to is Keenan Allen or Quentin Johnston or both are going to lose each week because Lad McConkey's resumed his place as the number 1 wide receiver. Aronde Gadsden is awesome as a tight end. And so I've got Quentin Johnston over Keenan Allen. Neither one of them is a top 24 wide receiver. They're both number 3s.
You agree, Jamie? Your thoughts?
Yeah, you can't trust Keenan Allen at this point. I think the targets that Quentin Johnston got last week are something to keep an eye on. Part of that, again, is with Gadsden leaving the game. So how much does Gadsden's return impact Johnston again? But the secondary is just so bad. It's so bad, so there's going to be some shots down the field for Johnston. Hopefully he delivers. But really it's, the pecking order has kind of been established. McConkey's the 1, Gadsden's the 2, Johnston's the 3, Allen's the 4.
Starter sit Travis Etienne. Heath?
Oh, my starter. I don't. If Brenton Strange is back, then maybe I lower him a little bit, but I don't even think about it with Travis Etienne.
You got him 8th. Jamie, I think you have him 21st. Is that right?
I don't love the matchup.
It's weird. They've gone back to being pretty bad against the run, but they are just a good defense. 4.9 yards per carry allowed to running backs. Tennessee running backs average 4.8. Pittsburgh running backs average 4.6. So why? Yeah, you're pretty low. I mean, this is a huge discrepancy between the two of you. Travis Etienne.
Look, you're starting him. I like Woody Marks better. I like Travion Henderson better. I don't know, like any other non-obvious guys. But
How about like Wan'Dale Robinson or ETN?
I would most likely start ETN. I'd most likely start both if I could. But
Yeah.
ETN certainly has a higher ceiling.
Casey says, "Come on, Jamie, get on the ETN train."
It's ETN season.
ATN, SCN. Yeah. I don't know if there's a T train in Manhattan. There's definitely an E and an N. Okay. So there's different viewpoints there. Your approach, Jamie, on the Jaguars wide receivers.
I would like to not approach them. I mean, you can't trust Jacoby Myers at this point. Brian Thomas Jr. would be the one I would rank the highest if he plays, but clearly he's not 100%. And you're talking about a Chargers team that's just been fantastic against opposing passing games. So at best, Washington's a number 3 receiver, but to me, he's more of a number 4.
Okay. Yeah, last week, Metcalf was terrible. Calvin Austin was terrible. Roman Wilson caught the late touchdown. Again, the Chargers, they don't usually shut down good receivers. I think you could argue Jordan Addison, DK Metcalf are the best examples. But
can you argue that Parker Washington's a good receiver?
No.
Okay.
No.
Now, the positive is 3 straight games with 7 targets or more. So he's going to be the guy most likely that Lawrence leans on. I think even if Brenton Strange returns, this is still the target leader and most likely chasing points if you play out the narrative. So he's not awful, but again, like how much confidence can you have if he doesn't score? And what do you have? 3 catches last week on 7 targets?
Parker Washington, yeah. Who do you like better, ETN or Kamani Vidal?
ETN for me.
I should probably have ETN ranked ahead of him, so I'll move ETN up a few spots.
All right, because the Jaguars are pretty good against running backs. And all right, Vidal, man, 7.5 points. Or 22.8, 7.5, 19.7, 3, 17.8.
Pattern's pretty easy to see.
Like who are some wide receiver? Tez Johnson or Kamani Vidal?
Vidal safer.
DK Metcalf or Kamani Vidal?
Same sentence.
I'll go DK.
Here's one. Chase Brown or Kamani Vidal?
Brown.
Yep.
Teteroa McMillan or Kamani Vidal?
I'll go Vidal.
I have them very, very close. I'm going to go Teteroa.
Vidal or Hunter Henry or Derrick Henry, pardon me. It
Henry.
says non-PPR.
Henry even harder.
Keenan Allen, Michael Wilson or Tyler Lockett?
Right now I have Allen still ranked ahead of these guys, but I don't think I adjusted Allen when I put Gadsden back in the rankings. So I may go Wilson or Allen.
It'll still be Allen for me.
Gadsden or Odunze?
Why would you sit either one? I don't care what size your league is.
Yeah, I'd probably go Odunze.
I'd go Rome.
Okay, let's go to our next game. By the way, start the Chargers DST. We got 2 games left, and I think they're pretty easy. We got Baltimore at Cleveland.
Start them all.
Well, why are we so confident in starting Derrick Henry, who has been pretty disappointing in most of the season? And the Browns, obviously, they usually have a pretty good run defense. It's been a little bit leaky lately. But I guess talk about the easy ones are Lamar Jackson's easy. You're not going to start. Okay, forget it. Let me focus here. Let's talk about the running backs. Jamie, let's talk about the running backs. Your confidence level in Derrick Henry and your confidence level in Quinshon Judkins.
I know last week was not the best example of this, but anytime Lamar Jackson is healthy, I'm going to feel very confident in Derrick Henry that they're going to move the ball and give him opportunities to score. If he had scored the touchdown instead of Justice Hill last week, I don't think anybody's concerned in any way, shape, or form about Derrick Henry because of what he did against the Dolphins the previous game. Same thing. So he's at worst a top 15 running back almost on a weekly basis. So I'm starting him. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm starting Lamar Jackson. Not even thinking about it. Zay Flowers is just going to be one of those frustrating low-end number 2 receivers that if he doesn't score, you're going to say, why did I start him? And if he scores, you're going to be like, wow, look, I told you he was going to be awesome. So I think you just start him by default. And Mark Andrews just seemingly is scoring every time Lamar Jackson's on the field now. So I'm going to start him as a low-end number 1 tight end. So I'd start him ahead of Kyle Pitts this week. I would start him ahead of that group of tight ends that we talked about over Njoku, those caliber of players. The only Browns player at this point for me. Oh, I'm sorry, you wanted running backs.
No, that's okay. This is fine.
I
I
mean,
mean, would you start Fannin over Andrews?
I would in PPR. Non-PPR, I'd go Andrews.
One note, it's too early to be adjusting rankings for wind, but if the forecast holds, Kevin Roth has this as the worst weather risk of the weekend, expecting 20-mile-an-hour winds with gusts of 30 to 35. We know how Cleveland gets, so check in on Sunday morning. There could be a downgrade for Zay Flowers.
I just got to say, Cleveland's run defense hasn't been quite as good lately. However, it's actually been kind of bad lately. So that gives you optimism. The first time Derrick Henry played Cleveland, he scored 2.3 fantasy points, and that was with Lamar Jackson. You know, when he played Houston, another great run defense, he had 15 carries for 33 yards and a touchdown. He did have a big game against the Rams, another good run defense. But it's a guy who doesn't catch passes who is going up against, in theory, a tough matchup. So I think he's 14th or 15th for everyone. So we like Derrick Henry because he's Derrick Henry and they should score points, but we don't like him top 5 or anything like that. So just keep that in mind.
Right.
And then, all right, Judkins, first 4 games of the year for Judkins, he averaged 4.8 yards per carry. Last 4 games, he's averaging 3.1 yards per carry. And his yards before contact have been horrible all year in the good sample size and the bad sample size. He's got one of the lowest yards before contact per carry of any running back in the NFL. So the line has not been good this year if you look at ratings and stuff like that. Anyway, Judkins or Vidal?
I would still go Judkins. I think it's encouraging that he has 3 targets in each of his last 2 games. I think he's still, especially if the wind's bad, they're going to give him a bunch of rush attempts. I don't think Baltimore scores a huge amount of points in this game against the Cleveland defense. So he's still I understand if you have some anxiety about starting Judkins, but he's still a pretty solid RB2 for me. I would start, obviously, Dowdle, Henderson, and Harvey over him.
Okay. I think it's one thing to keep an eye on with the Browns is if Dylan Gabriel struggles, narrator, he may struggle. We may get a quarterback change.
Yeah. All right.
Can you imagine the outrage if it's a 30-mile-an-hour wind game and that's when they give Shedeur his chance?
What if he wins the game?
Gabriel just had his best fantasy game by far, and they're talking about benching him. I know he didn't play that well. I guess you're not interested in Jerry Jeudy. What's that?
They lost to the Jets.
Yeah, they did. But that was really their special teams. Jerry Jeudy's not in the top 40. Maybe worth a stash. All right, Heath, let's talk about the Cleveland tight ends. Your level of confidence in both of them.
I think it was a disappointing game for Harold Fannin last week, but he still had a 21% target share. You talked about it. David Njoku's route participation was down around 50%. It looks, unless it changes, and it's gone back and forth a couple times this year, but it looks like they've settled on Fannin as their tight end 1, Njoku as their second tight end when they play 2 of them. I'm starting Fannin as a low-end starter over, really not over Otten or Schultz, but over the rest of the streamers, over Zach Ertz, over Mark Andrews, over guys like that. Njoku, more of a low-end number 2 for me. I understand if you want to keep him on the roster in case the usage flips again, but Fannin pretty easily over Njoku for me.
There's only one other guy that I would consider starting over him, and it's Theo Johnson, just with Jameis at quarterback.
Over who? Fannin or Njoku?
Or Fannin. Definitely over Njoku.
Yeah. No, I have Njoku in one league. I picked up Theo Johnson yesterday, and I just changed the lineup. But I don't want Njoku. I don't want anything to do with Njoku right now. It's two games in a row with a route participation rate under 60% for Njoku.
I think the only reason worth holding on to him, honestly, is Fannin, second week in a row, has popped up with a hamstring injury.
Okay. Yeah. Look, the route participation could go up and down. It wouldn't be a surprise if it's back up, but still, we're not talking about a high-end player. And the Ravens DST is a must start. All right, we got 1 game left. You want to save it for tomorrow or knock it out?
Knock it out.
Let's do it. Houston's at Tennessee.
This is what you wanted to save?
Nico Collins, 5 end zone targets last week. Didn't catch a single one of them. Start any Titans?
No.
Nope.
Which, if you had to choose a Titans running back, who would it be?
Spears.
Okay.
No.
Spears or Ken Walker?
Spears.
I'd go Walker over the Titans.
Spears or Kyle Monangai?
Spears. This is PPR.
How do you feel about the Texans offense? Who are you starting?
Schultz and Nico and Woody.
Agreed.
So big, like everybody that matters. Davis Mills, no.
I think he's a good super flex or 2 quarterback option, but again, great week for quarterbacks.
Geno Smith or Davis Mills?
Geno.
I've got Davis just a little bit higher right now. I would start Davis Mills over Bo Nix.
Okay. Davis Mills, first 3 quarters, 188 yards, no touchdowns. Fourth quarter, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown. Tennessee's been just horrible against everyone lately. I mean, their defense
just stopped it horrible.
Really struggled. So then I think we just get into Woody Marks. I didn't see this. Someone said in the chat there was a report about Woody Marks not getting an increased workload. Did you see anything like that?
No.
Oh, right here. Did you see the report of Texans offensive coordinator saying he won't elevate Woody Marks' workload? What the heck?
Let's see if I can find it.
So I think like what we're hoping is that this is something new, because it was the 80% snap share, by far a season high. It's a 3rd time this year that he's played more than half of the snaps. The first time was against the Titans, the last time they played them, and he was absolutely incredible. Scored 2 touchdowns, had 119 yards. The next week, he played 38% of the snaps and had 7 touches. The week after that, very good game against Seattle because he caught a touchdown. Had 13 touches, played 63% of the snaps. The very next week, he played 40% of the snaps.
And the very next week, Nick Chubb had 17 carries.
So I'm starting Woody Marks. He's a top 24 guy, but I do think there's at least, like, they've came out and said that they didn't really think he was a feature back earlier in the year. And I hope that opinion changed last week.
It's an elite matchup. Tennessee's 5th worst against running backs, 4.92 yards per carry to running backs, 2nd fewest receiving yards per game to running backs. That's one thing they've been good at. And they have actually been a little bit better against the run lately. Not always, but a little bit better. But
all right, this is from
matchup.
Sam Warren of the Houston Chronicle, who posted this an hour ago. Here is the headline: How rookie Woody Marks is taking the lead role in Houston Texans backfield. The Houston Texans, this is the lead sentence. The Houston Texans appeared to have a new lead back Sunday.
Okay. Well, I thought what was really interesting was that he got all the goal line work too. I mean, they just clearly favored Woody Marks.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's anything in here from any coaches. So
I'm going to wrap up the show while you do that.
Offense coordinator Nick Caley said the uptick was more spontaneous than predetermined. You go into a game and you sit there and you try to have balance in a variety of ways for all the right reasons. Kelly said sometimes you get into a rhythm, and he played well, and he was playing well down the stretch. Here's Kelly again. It's hard to say how every game's going to go. Sometimes it doesn't go the way you want it, but he did a great job. I thought he played consistent throughout the game, and happy his performance for sure. He's gotten better every single week, not just as a runner. He'll put his face on guys and be physical. That's a big part of what we ask those guys to do. So it's just a complete package and continuing to get better and learning from things as we go.
Okay. All right. There's a little bit of risk, I guess, but this could be a good week for him. And start the Texans DST. Of all the matchups of any position, I think Texans, like, it's the best DST basically against the best matchup. So there you go. That's it for fantasy football today. If you want more, CBS Sports Network, 1 p.m. Eastern, Dave, Jamie, and Heath are going to be rocking and rolling there. And we'll talk to you tomorrow with the NFC home games. Thanks a lot.